find a good person to do what you want and don't wait, because I don't think it's going to be very easy 6 months to a year from now to find a good builder who isn't swamped.
For the hard-working souls, he raised a cheer, building a future without any fear.
Happy to have Dorian Ben. Now, Dorian has been in this game, the wood game, for what, 40 years, pretty close?
1985.
Yeah. So
40 years next year.
40 years next year. That's a long time. And it's that entire time has been treated timbers.
Absolutely.
Treated timbers, their application. Of course, you've seen many, many mistakes. You've seen many great and unique applications using wood. But today I thought we'd talk about, because yesterday we were talking about 2024, well, actually COVID 24 and 25. If we were to ask you what you saw in the market, so we're talking to contractors, we're talking to people who make their living out of using timber, wood, and vinyl. And yesterday you and I were talking, and you said, you know, you have like a very weird vision of what might happen in 25. And I couldn't bring it because my wife is a witch, and she held on to the crystal ball. She wouldn't let me bring it. But if she had let me bring it, what would you see? What are you thinking? Put it in the context of COVID 24 and 25.
Yeah, what occurred to me yesterday at the end of the meeting that we had discussing how 25 might look was that a comment that we all kind of felt in agreement was that the availability of products was much better now than it had been for 2 or 3 years, certainly during the COVID era when items were just extremely hard to get and lead times went from 2 weeks to 2-3 months. And it occurred to me that after talking to 1 or 2 large customers, that some version of shortage or just a little bit of an imbalance of demand over supply could occur again, given the conversations that we're beginning to hear with the enthusiasm that people have for building. And so really what I was voicing to you yesterday was really the remorse, or the buyer's remorse, from comments about, you know, we don't need to keep as much of this or that or the other because we can get it very easily, when in fact 6 months from now maybe it won't be so easy to get it, because indicators are that but the buying or the necessary products for large projects is gonna come back into vogue.
And so what has happened when we were talking, it hit you, and I think putting it in other words, the producers may not really be in a position to produce enough of what's coming. You see kind of a wave of demand, and it takes a while to ramp up a production facility.
Exactly. And so what happened is we had this knee-jerk reaction during COVID when producers, after about a year, saw that the shortages were persisting and even growing. We saw investment from Canada and outside sources buying sawmills, things like this. Well, the flip side that happened in 23, which was the correction coming back out of COVID, we have the divesting in many cases. We have sawmills closing again. Well, it really depends on the rate at which the market comes back, or the rate at which
producing side.
Well, the rate at which the projects come, because so if the projects ramp up slowly, then we're going to see, you know, probably an adequate response from production. But if the projects ramp up quickly, it's going to affect pricing and availability significantly. And the reason that I had this little premonition yesterday is that one of the things that I keep hearing from the kind of right is the things that we're going to do have to be done fast. Well, if there's this
politically,
freedom,
you mean?
Politically speaking, and from an administrative standpoint, if the freedom that's being introduced to the markets, reducing,
Red tape.
red tape and things like this, there's going to be, or there could be, this kind of swift episode of people just rushing into the market to say, hey, we've got 2 years to get this done before something else changes.
Well,
and
Congress changes back to Democratic. Right,
closes our window of opportunity. And so, that just occurred to me. I don't know whether that's what will come to pass, but the rate at which the business surges back in is hard to.
There's a lot of optimism
at this point.
But there's certainly a lot of optimism.
There certainly is.
And so banks release more funds. People have projects that were on hold that now won't be on hold anymore, and the demand becomes competitive in this space.
Yep. The Texas coast has lots of projects that have been kind of dangling, waiting for this.
All the way from homeowners, all the way through developers.
Yep.
Of 50, 60 houses at a time.
Correct.
And some government projects too, I believe, down in Corpus and
Maybe.
across, for piers and things like that.
Maybe.
We have listening also Eric Lincoln. Eric, can you add anything to this, you think?
Well, I think we have to take into account the influx of people and the money that has come into the state over the last 5 years through large corporations like SpaceX and higher paying jobs that will put more
Demand.
disposable income into play.
Yes, a good point.
And that would increase beach homes and things like that.
That would heat up the market even more.
Yeah, you're already seeing an increase in what do they call mini ranches and things like that in West Texas and in East Texas and areas where they're dividing up large properties as people want their mini ranch.
And there's a lot more wealth coming into the
wealth
state. It's the wealth that's coming in from California and other places.
Yeah, sort of to piggyback on that, the development that I'm talking about is waterfront development, and it's a commercial project, but these are residential
As well.
lots inside a large commercial project. There may also be some multifamily and stuff on the property, but it's really to do with what Eric says. It comes out of an expectation that these properties will be needed.
Now a lot in particularly last 5-7 years, the use of vinyl in bulkheading has really taken off. I mean, it took off before that, but it really got big. You see the same type of demand supply challenge in vinyl? Vinyl's
it's possible. It's possible. During COVID, we realized for the first time we actually had vinyl pricing, sheet piling increases of any noticeable sort, and we've been selling the product for 20 years. So the thing about a product like vinyl sheet piling is that it competes for raw materials, which are basically plastic and recycled plastic, with a lot of other building materials now. We have composite decking that uses some of this. We have all kinds of windows and house components that are extruded. And so the demand for those polymers is bigger than it ever was. And so, the possibility that vinyl sheet piling could be affected is certainly.
So one of the things I was thinking about in helping our contractors, and Chris, you can jump in. Chris Denny is our producer here. He's on the side. He's got bright lights all over his face and his head from the background. He's like ethereal, right? But one of the things,
I'm not here in sunny Colorado, so can't do much about that.
Colorado with 3 foot of snow on the ground. But one of the things I was thinking of is, what does a contractor do about this? Now that so your premonition doesn't come to pass, everything's fine. It's business as usual. It does come to pass. Is there anything that a contractor can do to mitigate this type of growth, this type of problem? What are you thinking, any one of you?
Preparation. Preparation is about the only thing that you can do. It's knowing what you're going to need and getting ahead of the game so that you have the time built in case there is a lull. I mean, you asked about vinyl and just jumping back to that for just a second. Never in all of the years that we were selling it did a situation exist where we were on allocation. and raw material was on allocation. Something that even
By that you mean accumulation. You gave the order, and now you have to wait until they get the raw material and do the production.
worse, they were allotting us only a certain amount of materials because they were only getting a certain amount of raw material. So it wasn't even just. I mean, yes, it affected production time, and yes, production time was stretched out as a result. But the whole situation with a plastic extruder not having the raw material, not being able to get enough raw material, had never happened.
And so again, getting back, so you say preparation, you're talking about I'm a contractor that does 8 projects a year. And you're telling me now that maybe I should pre-buy? Well, that's a lot of working capital money. Or should I just pre-order? Or what does preparation mean to me?
While Eric thinks about that, I'll just tell you what, because I began to think about preparation when Eric said that. I hear 2 things. It's thinking ahead. It's actually documenting and beginning to build a method for yourself of forecasting what your work is going to be. And then it becomes communication. And it becomes, this is where having what I would call an alliance, a very strong relationship with your vendor becomes key. And those are the people during COVID who could get product when it was hard to get, and who could keep their projects going. And
have prices that they knew about.
There was a big difference between working with those kinds of guys and working with people who are in a panic.
We experienced it on both sides, where you have people that you've been working with for years that you are going to take care of, and then you had people that were searching around that had never given you the time of day
Before.
Yeah.
So it's a relationship thing as well.
We experienced that with going out and trying to find new vendors. That they were suffering the same consequences.
Because of course the pricing is also an issue. So it's a matter of building up the right expectations with their customers. If I'm a contractor, a reasonable sized contractor, I got two crews maybe working on a house or working on a bulkhead. I'm now, if what Dorian's premonition comes true, what I'm going to be saying to my customer is prices are going to go up. The cost of your bulkhead is going to go up. And that type of language communicated now would probably help when the time comes. And if it doesn't go up, then you're ahead of the game anyway. Would that be a reasonable recommendation?
I mean, just simply using COVID as an example, we had what we thought were ridiculously high prices in 21. But people continued to buy or make commitments for projects that weren't going to happen, that couldn't happen until 22, because the price was expected to be and was even higher then. So at the beginning of a situation like that, certainly having come back from COVID, anybody that sees that, it's like when you say to them, the price is going to be higher 6 months from now, a year from now, that causes people to take action. Right?
Which then causes the price to be higher.
Well, the thing is that it's then the relationships and the communication between the vendor and the installer that becomes key, because now you're actually trying to hold an agreement in place that was started, by everybody. We're going to produce this and have it ready by then for this today price. And that only happens with a relationship.
Definitely. Chris, what do you think? You've been listening to all this, but you've also been in the wood business for 25 years. What are you thinking?
There's a lot going on. I mean, when you look at your typical small contractor, for them to sort of forecast what's going on out there, they don't have these macro type numbers going on. They're going, well, I might get the Smith project, and I might get the Johnson project, and I might get the Lee project. I'm not really sure, but looks like I'm 90% on the Smith project. And so forecasting is pretty tough. Now they can call up and say, Eric, pretty sure I'm going to get this. I'm going to need the material. It looks like it's going to happen in February. So if that's going to happen, what am I looking at? That sort of thing. Really good to have the conversation. I'm not sure what I mean, what can you guys do on that sort of thing for an individual, contractor who's got a crew or has, three guys working or whatever? What does that sort of relationship look like for that guy?
Although we cannot buy for every hope, wish, and dream and prepare for these people, the when you're seeing quotes, you see trends, and you can develop your inventory to try to fend off maybe some of the time frame differential. It really all comes down to how fast and how furious it gets, if it does.
Chris, I think that here's the way it looks. It's not as complicated. It doesn't have to be as complicated as you laid out there. A possibility is always a possibility, and those are kind of questionable. I'm talking about closed deals, right? If we go to some of our small and mid-range bulkheaders, for example, they all have what we would call an order file or a job file. These are jobs they have under contract that are in a schedule already. Well, most of them are very, very sort of, I would say, lax about sharing that schedule with us. So number one, let's start sharing, because in COVID, we were sharing schedules that went out for months with people. And that has stopped, right? So in fact, what happens is that I understand the resistance of contractors to sharing their schedule because they like to change it around. They like to take the Smith job that they were going to do before the Jones job and put it after the Jones job because another job, a bigger job just came up and they can kind of wrangle it, right? And that affects the way they deal with their suppliers. However, knowing that a job's in place and knowing what it's going to take, the only way to set the price on it is to place that order. And that goes for them and it goes for us. We got to cover that order. So it comes back to communication. It comes back to us being really clear and being good at communication with our customers and saying, look, here's the price today. I can hold this price till Friday, or I can hold this price to the end of the month. And then them passing that on. And of course, the onus is going to end up with the owner who says, I'm not ready. The bank hasn't approved me. And you can't give us the order by Friday. Well, that's okay. We just have to look at it next week in case something has changed. But it's a high level of communication.
Yeah. And of course, the contractor can go back to, Johnson or Smith or whoever and say, hey, my supplier just said that on Friday, the price has got to go up. So, I can't control this thing, but, I'm trying to get you the best price and we got to do it by Friday if you're going to do it. I mean, you can call them directly if you want.
Right. And in a funny and peculiar sort of way, that can actually increase their sales because it increases a sense of urgency and a sense of timing that is super practical. And if it's honest and not manipulative in any way,
right, this
can really create the type of trust they want to have with their customers.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, at least to me, that we had large builders of large custom homes producing contracts that would get executed in which the framing material was not costed. That is to say, priced at time of shipment. And they would give them an estimated range.
Budget, what they call it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're talking about a house that takes a year to build, right? And until I get to bring in the material, that's when you'll know the cost. Well, that just shows you kind of how extreme COVID set the market because people wanted to continue and build. And I'm just wondering, I mean, this is where this all came. Will people want to build that badly this time around?
Yeah. Yeah. COVID was kind of extreme. So it was everyone was acting different,
well, but
across the board.
The point of this particular video blog was, if COVID was the extreme, is there some mini version of it coming? And we really want to spend some time with our customers and with their customers, because this blog can be shared with anybody, to say, you have a $250,000 addition to your house coming. Think about this. Or you have a $25 million project that you're borrowing the money from the bank for. Think about this. That's kind of what was our intention, to be as open as possible and to have at least a couple practical suggestions.
Yeah, to the degree that a developer or a potential project owner would see this conversation, the part that I would love them to consider is this: find a good person to do what you want and don't wait, because I don't think it's going to be very easy 6 months to a year from now to find a good builder who isn't swamped.
Yeah, that's almost another selling point of builders right now, to get orders.
Well, it's a call to action.
Yeah, for sure.
For the hard-working souls, he raised a cheer, building a future without any fear.